Hello everyone, my name is Provocative, and today I'm going to be going over the Magic Set Editor Survivor Round 1 submissions and results, recap and review. Perfectly normal title length, not too long, not too short. The point of this series is to go through the submissions for MSE Survivor Season 6's submissions for Round 1, pick out some of my favorites, and show them to you guys. I would just like to emphasize this is not an official review or grade in any way. I am not associated with the hosts or the judges, and this is purely for entertainment value. Just to go through how we're going to run this, I'm going to pick honorable mentions, which will each be one card that I will discuss, and then at the end, I will go over my favorite batch of cards by one designer, which would be 4 cards. I will also include judge excerpts from their reviews alongside the cards if you want to read those. Let's go ahead and move on to the challenge description. Our contestants were asked to design 4 cards in total. They were 2 multicolored uncommon that act as signposts for a limited archetype, one of which had to be a creature and the other a non-creature. And then we were also asked to create 2 monocolored commons for the same archetype that share different colors with those signposts. For example, if I made a blue-red signpost, I would have to make a blue common and a red common. And we were asked to do these in the play booster style. Alright, without further ado, let's go ahead and begin with our first honorable mention, which is going to be for Ambrose. Our card is Instill Fear. For 2 and a black and an instant, we have target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. If you control a super weapon, that creature gets -14/-14 until end of turn. Artifacts and enchantments with mana value 5 or greater are super weapons. I love super weapons as a batch mechanic. It's very simple, but it just changes the draft environment so much. Normally in your draft, you are not super incentivized to take artifacts and enchantments that cost 5 or more. You generally want to keep your stuff to low curve, 2 mana creatures, removal, but now we have a very solid incentive to go high and expensive with our cards that we want to grab. And I just love the flavor of the effect here. We have a dinky little -4/-4, but if you manage to get that super weapon, you go to an insane over-the-top -14/-14, which in any reasonable limited environment is just murder, which is perfect. Alright, moving on to our second honorable mention, we have Ban Crabs. I really just wanted to highlight the Pray 4 mechanic here. It's going to be for the card Blade of Saint Legato. 2 and a white for a 2/3 with a creature human knight. When Blade of Saint Legato enters, it prays for flying. You can put a flying counter on it, or create a faith enchantment token with 2 mana, sacrifice this token, put a flying counter on target creature, activate only as a sorcery. I love this kind of modality built into the mechanic. It has so many different avenues you can run with it. You can do it as like keyword tribal with how Ikoria did it with all these different keywords running around. You could do enchantments matter. You could do tokens matter. You could do sacrifice matters even. There's so many options. And then the ability to give the creature itself flying or put it on something else for an additional mana cost, of course, is a very nice modality to have. Excellent mechanic. Moving on, our next honorable mention is for Gardu with The House Always Wins. Black and a red for an enchantment. Whenever you attack, you may wager on target attacking creature. If you do, whenever it deals combat damage to a player this turn, create a treasure token. When you wager a creature, sacrifice it into combat unless it deals combat damage to a player. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. I really like the wager mechanic. Forcing you to go into the red to get value out of your cards and rewarding you if you manage to actually connect is a very fun playstyle. It does require a bit of setup and there is of course risk involved, but if you manage to actually get through, you get a reward. It's a very simple way to play, but I think it's a very fun mechanic. I do think there may be some risks. It is a very all or nothing, and if you get screwed, it's very painful, but you do have incentives to if your creatures die as well, so it's not all bad. So clearly Gardu has thought this through. Very well done. Moving on to our final honorable mention, we have Pie Guy with Abyssal Gateway. 2 and a blue and a black for an artifact with, at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equals to the number of tapped creatures you control. and then you can pay 2 and tap the gateway to tap or untap target creature. I love Throne of the God Pharaoh, and now you're telling me I can build a limited deck around it? I'm all in. So, just how cool the activatability is with this card cannot be understated. It can work as an icy manipulator. You can surprise untap a blocker that you tapped to trigger the end step ability, or in a scenario you need it, you can pay 2 and tap your own creature to contribute to that end step trigger. There are so many different ways to use this little artifact, and I adore it. Great work. I should mention, by the way, before we move on to the final pick, the honorable mentions are in no order, and I love them all, just to be clear. Alright, now it is time to reveal my favorite entry for round 1. Drumroll, please. You can drumroll at home, I don't have a drum with me. Our favorite entry is 7 Nix's entry. Congratulations. Let's go ahead and go through the cards. Our very first card is Dark Sea Captain. 2 and a green for a 1/1 creature human pirate. When Dark Sea Captain enters, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Whenever you shuffle, put a +1/+1 counter on Dark Sea Captain. This ability triggers only once each turn. Boom. Mind-blowing. Now, shuffle matters is something we've seen before, but very rarely, and never a limited archetype. If I heard, without seeing the cards, that it was going to be shuffle matters, I would immediately be down on it. But I think 7 Nix's implementation is actually really clever and shows that they know how to make this work. Shuffling is inherently a mechanic that has no value. So we have cards here that get you value while shuffling and pay it off. So you have ways to both enable and pay off in the same card in the same deck. We have a creature here that can go ahead and fetch a basic and put into your hand, then shuffle. There's a shuffle trigger and you're up a card. And the same creature can grow. This shows that we have power in the archetype, and we're not just sitting around with useless creatures just waiting to shuffle, or shuffling with no payoff. We have enablers here. Then we have Bubble. 3 and a blue for a sorcery. Draw 3 cards, then shuffle a card from your hand or a creature you control into its owner's library. I love this card. I think drawing 3 and shuffle a card from your hand is a good rate, and then shuffling a creature you control in its owner's library, well, it is going to very rarely come up compared to shuffling a card from your hand, but having the option is great as well. I think that this is pretty much exactly what you want to be doing for supporting this archetype. It's a card that can go into pretty much any blue deck that wants to go a little slow, and if you manage to get a shuffle deck, it turns its power up to 11. Moving on to our signposts. Our first one is the creature signpost, Dream Devourer. 1 a blue and a green for a 2/3 creature fish horror with flying, and whenever you shuffle, create a 1/1 blue fish creature token with flying. Simple, strong stats, and it has a very compelling payoff. There's really not much more to say. This is exactly what you want to be doing. Moving on to our other signpost, we have the slightly more complicated one, the Leviathan Consumes. 2 and a green for a sorcery revelation, 4/4. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control, and it has Plunge. If you've noted this card's name for Plunge, put it onto the battlefield as a horror creature. Otherwise, note its name and shuffle it into your library. This may be my favorite card of the submission. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of revelations because I do think they tend to be very high value in comparison to normal cards. However, this one doesn't actually go up on cards when you cast it. You actually have to draw the second copy and play it. Or draw the original copy if you're running it as a one-of, but I digress. And then it shuffles. So again, another incidental synergy to help with the deck. It still works on its own, but when you have the shuffle synergies, again, turned up to 11. Exactly how you want to build this archetype. Now, I do think this specific card is probably a little, as Judge One put it, there's a little bit much of a disparity between the first and second cast, but I think the design intent here and the wording of Plunge shows that the designer at least kept in mind the potential disparity there, even if they maybe missed the mark slightly. Alrighty. That was our recap of Survivor Round 1 and my favorite cards from the week. Did you agree with my picks? Did you have different picks that you thought were perhaps more enticing? Feel free to comment down below or let me know in the MSE Discord server. Thank you for watching. Next week, we are going to be designing cards for Commander. We are tasked with designing a face commander, an alternate commander, and 2 support cards, one of which is a non-creature, and the other of which must say the words your commander in the text box by referring to your commander in some way. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see ya. Bye-bye.